My name is Bob Wagner, and I served for 20 years and 8 months in the U.S. Army. I served in the Ranger Battalion in the Airborne Unit. I was in the infantry and Special Forces. I owe my life to David because at the time that I reached out to him, I was at the end of my ropes, and my family was very concerned for my mental health and things. And if it wasn't for him, because he gave me hope, he gave me the hope that somebody other than close family cares. And he helped me, and I'm still here. About 4 years ago, I was having a very difficult time dealing with the VA for my medical care, and I was at the end of my ropes. I wasn't contemplating suicide, but my friends and my family were very, very concerned. And one day they saw David on the television, on a news program, and they said, well, why don't you contact him? And I was leery of doing so, for asking anyone for help, but I asked him for help. I reached out to him, and he helped me in ways I couldn't really believe. I would describe David as the best kind of friend. He's not, first of all, he and I became brothers, more than friends, in the military. And as time has, I didn't see him for, God, it was 20 years maybe, and when I reached out to him. And he's not like a friend who is always asking you to do stuff or who you have to hang out with altogether. But he's a friend that, if you really need a friend, he will help you. Mm-hmm. I have friends, close friends who haven't done as much for me or even, I'll say, cared for me the way he has. I consider him a brother. I trained with him in leadership schools, so I saw the kind of person he was, and I became friends with him because of that. Now, I've met other politicians and I've met other elected officials who will they're fake. They will greet you and smile at you, and they'll shake your hand, and they'll tell you they care and they'll want to do something about it. But David, when he helped me, he totally went out of his way. I would tell any veteran to just walk up to him and talk to him. He is a very nice guy, a friendly guy, but when it comes to veterans, because he's one himself, he understands some of the struggles that we go through when we go to try to get help. So you can reach out to him, and he will help you as if he's been your friend forever.
David A. Christian. I enlisted in the military at 17 years of age, and the military was good for me. And I moved very fast through the ranks. There was a war going on in Vietnam. So as a result, I became the youngest commissioned officer since the Civil War. So I was commissioned at the age of 18, and I was leading men in battle. When I was 19, I became a captain at 20. I wasn't old enough to vote or drink in the United States, back here in most states. But I returned and, led, I was very, very successful on the battlefield, but I got shot up pretty bad. I was machine gunned across the chest. I was paralyzed in my right hand, my ulnar nerve and medial nerve. I couldn't use my right hand. I was banged up. I had 40% of my body burnt with napalm. And I couldn't walk at first, so I used an electric wheelchair, then a regular wheelchair, then crutches, then a cane. And then I ran a 26-mile marathon in New York and said to God, if you let me finish, I'll never hurt myself again. When I came back, I went to Villanova University for undergraduate school. I went to Rutgers Law School. I went to Penn for graduate school. And I went to Middlebury for Russian language. So I was very fortunate, and I have a wife, 4 children, and 6 grandchildren. So I've been fortunate to meet David many years ago. I've known him over a decade. David O, Councilman David O. I like Councilman David O because, like myself, he was willing to take on the military service, willing to put the uniform on, and willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice. And that is, when you become a military person, you sign a blank check, and that is that you're willing to give your life for your country. So he did that, and I did that, as all the other military members do. But getting out of the military, you're somewhat shocked because it's a social battlefield. And the social battlefield entails many people. I mean, you have first responders on the social battlefield, such as police and fire and those folks there, and also military people, the veterans, as they come back. And there's not a warm and fuzzy feeling for the veterans many times. And as they come back, and the biggest thing that I felt, that if you get a veteran a job, then it will cut down many social problems. It'll cut down domestic relation problems. It'll cut down abuse problems, substance abuse. It'll cut down many things because it gives a human being dignity that they have a job. So I look back, my mother was a veteran of World War II. My mother met my father in the Philippines. I look back and I see all these things in our society, and what is the biggest thing that I think that can help veterans in all of their issues, so they can get their minds off their disability, get their minds off some of the things that drain them. And the biggest thing is a job. And I saw in David O a champion to look for jobs. In David O, he also was working to get people jobs. Aside from running for city council, he is the proof in the pudding. He established legislation. He made friends and built bridges with different people. Whether they're Democrats or Republicans, he realized that we had to come together, the common denominator, and that was to get jobs. And he followed through on many programs, and which were job related. I was very, very forceful. I felt I was blessed by God. I was very fortunate also that I got to go to school. I got to do things. I got to marry. I got to come back here and help in society. And I could fight for veterans. And why did God give me so much? Yes, I had a lot of pain. Yes, I had a lot of suffering. But I had so much. And I could share that with people. But you need to have soldiers with you. And David O was a soldier. And we had many things in common. He's a paratrooper. You know the guts it takes to stand up and hook up. You shuffle to the door and you look out that plane, and that guy slaps you on the butt and you say, go, and you got to jump out of that plane. Your stomach is, sometimes on top of your head. It's a scary situation. David O had the courage to do that. He's a brother to me as a paratrooper. I bled on the battlefields, but my biggest pain did not come from a foreign battlefield, it came from the social battlefield back here. The enemy was easier to detect on the foreign battlefields than on the social battlefields back here. And trying to find a job and having people discriminate against you and not telling people that you're in the military and not telling people that you're a veteran, and people finding a way to get around veterans' preference, and people trying to find a way to get around many things. The Veterans Administration itself, David O challenged the Veterans Administration. There's more non-veterans that work in the Veterans Administration than there are veterans. So why isn't there any empathy towards the veterans? Why is the professionalism sometimes lacking? Well, if you have people there that are looking down on the veterans, they work there. Simple logic will tell you why the veterans are being treated or mistreated at times. Not all times, not all places, but they do. There are many, many stories about the treatment of veterans, and David stood forth, and he helped people, go down and fight for the disabilities at the VA hospital at 39th and Woodland. He helped people, and he helped different organizations work with veterans, get veterans jobs, get veterans off the streets, the homeless situation. Veterans don't know the legislation oftentimes. There should be no veteran on the street. There's a pension for veterans if they're destitute. Veterans don't know that. They can get a pension. David helps educate people. David O is a man of courage. David O is a man, he's a pioneer. He's the only veteran on city council. He's the only Asian. I think he's the first Asian to come on city council. I have great love and respect for a man who stands out, and he stands up, and he's proud of what he's doing, where he's come from. He's not ashamed that he's an Asian. He embraces the Korean community. He embraces the Vietnamese community. He embraces the Cambodian community. He embraces the Filipino community. He embraces the Japanese. He embraces those that had hardship when they came to this country here. David O is a man of the people. And guess what? He embraces the black people and the white people also. He embraces everyone. David O is colorblind, and he's first and foremost out to get a person a job, out to get a person their dignity back. And fortunately for the firefighters, he's fought for them. Fortunately for the police, he's fought for them. And I have to say, great fortune for the veterans that he has fought for us. And I'm glad to stand hand in hand with him. I've worked in Washington, D.C. I've worked under 4 different United States presidents. I've worked for the United States Senate in Washington, D.C. I've written legislation pertaining to Agent Orange, pertaining to post-traumatic stress. I've written that. I feel good that I've helped people, but I can only do it. I helped build the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. I helped do things, but you can only accomplish little things or big things with the people around you. And David O is not embarrassed to surround himself with people that may be more qualified in a lot of ways. We're not all knowledgeable about building different things, monuments, and every avenue to get a job. He will bring people in that will help him. And if someone needs help, go to David O, Councilman David O in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm sure proud of him. I consider him a brother in arms, and I consider him a brother on the social battlefield back here in America. It's painful for David, and it's painful for veterans to hear that, because we know it's not the truth. I mean, I sat with a group of veterans at the FOP Lodge 5, and they're all veterans, and they're policemen also, and we know how much David has done for us. So when we hear the mudslinging of politics, and politics is a tough game, and David's strong enough. You know, he wore the uniform of our nation. He's strong enough to stand up to it. But it's painful to hear, you know, these allegations in mudslinging at different times. And it always only surfaces when it's election time. Election time, you hear all the mudslinging. As soon as the election's over, all the people, and many of the people that threw mud, they snuggle up to those that got elected. And David has seen some of the people who threw mud at him, and he's seen them snuggle up to him. So it's unfortunate. It's a tough, rough and tumble game, politics, and don't believe everything you hear in the political process there. David O has served with Green Beret outfits. You know, I'm a former Green Beret, a former Ranger. I just recently had a Ranger reunion here in the Philadelphia area. They closed down 95, brought the Rangers down. It was a wonderful experience. I'm talking about some of the toughest fighting men in the world. And they felt honored to be part of Philadelphia. And you know who made that all happen? Made the Rangers successful, made the Rangers feel good? And Councilman David O.
Alex Orchowski, Navy veteran. I was a search and rescue swimmer with the United States Navy. Greater Philadelphia Veterans Network, as I saw, was a gap in transitioning service members where it was to form the largest network of veterans in this area by industry. So technology, finance, healthcare. What I saw missing was if people wanted to network outside the military in their own local area, they really wanted to see where the other veterans were so they could learn from them and find out what those industries are and maybe get help for introductions into those companies. But most importantly, it is to help veterans with the right skill sets to approach the job market appropriately. They are very humble. They don't want to talk about themselves. They really talk about the past and not the future. So the tagline that we have in our organization is "Our tools, your mission." Now, that was the foundation of our organization, but the result of it is, over years, is we are helping veterans grow their economic gains, become better leaders, and then help them grow their businesses with our Veteran Shark Tank. So Philadelphia is becoming one of the best destinations for vets. Veterans themselves are very skilled in many, many different things. The problem, one of the major problems, is the structure of getting out of the military and creating your own orders. So in the military, you're given orders: wake up, go to chow, go to the helo, go to the firing range. So you're a little bit hardwired with great intelligence, great skill sets. So when you get out, it's not, the word purpose has been thrown around, but I think it's objective. Who do I want to be? How do I get there? And who do I need as assets? Councilman David O, from the first time we started out about 9 to 10 years ago, we formed a strong relationship based on his values, not only himself as the veteran, but also what he believes in the city about businesses as well. So there was a double alignment in not only about getting people back to work, but helping people grow their companies as well. So David and I come from the same background. We both served. He served in the Army. I served in the best in the Navy. And what happened was we share some of the same values of not only helping our veterans, but also growing our city of Philadelphia. My background is the city of Philadelphia gave my father the opportunity from France when I first came here. So I really believe we share the same values of growing our city, but also we have a strong veteran connection. And David O has been there for helping employers better understand the value. As a legislator, it really is good to be in front of these businesses to share with them what the values are of these veterans and how the city is behind it. And it really shares with the employers of where the city is going in helping veterans land with jobs. With the media today, it seems like we're broken, and all the news out there about what we are suffering about. But what happens is it's not good when we're looking to put veterans in front of employers. They're under already a judgment of sort about what challenges they may lie, rather than all the skill sets that they bring, an accelerated learning curve, the responsibilities at a young age, and adaptability and teamwork and leadership that they can bring the organization. So that's the current challenge of trying to get that first into the mindset of everybody, that's not just employers, but just our community as well. And I think Councilman O has been strongly a big advocate on that, and making sure that the community and the city helps share those strengths. David O has been a huge supporter of the veteran cause here locally and also nationally. But more importantly, everything revolves around the same, which is jobs, which is really about how do you get veterans employed. And when we first connected, there was a lot of synergy about it, revolved around the employers of Center City, Philadelphia. How can the employers understand the value that our veterans bring? And for us, having somebody like David O that is highly recognized from the Army and his background in front of the employers really helps them understand why they should and they need. And from there, they created the tax credit, and David created tax credit, which I supported for the employers of the city of Philadelphia, which got it recognized on a national level. So we're bringing a lot of momentum for our city of Philadelphia. And if you bring more people to our city, then it's a win for everybody. The families come living here with the veterans and the family members. And then moving forward, there's a lot to be done also together. There's veteran-owned companies in and around Philadelphia that are growing, and we're also recruiting them now to come to Philadelphia. So seeing somebody as David in our city helps veteran-owned companies understand who can support them when they come to the city of Philadelphia.
Hey, I'm Patrick Murphy. I'm the first Iraq vet elected to Congress. I served in Northeast Philadelphia and all of Bucks County. I served 2 terms. I left Congress and eventually became the acting Secretary of the Army, which was an honor to lead our men and women in the Army out of the Pentagon. But I will tell you, I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud that we have great leaders, public servants like David O. At a time when we have the least amount of veterans serving in public office, folks like that really leading the way, like David does. I think what makes David O. so special is that He's a person who wore the cloth of our country, served in the U.S. Army, was airborne, and then came back home to our town in Philadelphia and bent over backwards for our brother and sister veterans to make sure that he bridged the gap from the Vietnam generation that wasn't treated the right way to the Iraq, Afghanistan generation, my generation of combat veterans. When we came home, he made sure that he represented the voice of our brother and sister veterans to make us feel welcome, to make sure that when we have an epidemic of veterans, 22 veterans and active troops who commit suicide every day because they don't feel like they're living with a purpose, because they feel left behind. He made sure that he was leading from the front to take care of our brother and sister veterans coming home. When I came back home to Philadelphia, David O was one of the world leaders in our city. Was one of those guys that was, him and Dan Bozak ran the 82nd Airborne Veterans Association in Greater Philadelphia. Both those guys, Dan Bozak as a Teamster, and obviously David O as a future councilman, but someone who's a lawyer and an activist in our city, really wrapped their arms around me and made me feel welcome. And I made sure I wasn't one of those veterans who fell through the cracks. So I will always be grateful for David O and people like Dan Bozak. But I will tell you, David O, to go see him go on to be the only veteran in the Philadelphia City Council, to bend over backwards for our brother and sister veterans, to do what's necessary to move our city in the right direction, I think is pretty awesome. But one of the reasons why I've always loved and supported David O is because he's a person that, one, is a veteran, two, is a workhorse, not a show horse, gets things done, and three, he represents our values. He's a person who's never forgot where he came from. He has really had a distinguished career, not just in the legal profession, but also the military profession, and is trying to use those experiences of his life to bend over backwards, to help, to have that row house mentality, to help to the person on his left and his right, to take care of them when they're in need. David has that same spirit. David O is one of those people that say, what can we do to make the lives better for the people on our left and our right? What can we do to move the ball forward on behalf of our veterans? What can we do to move the ball forward to bring jobs back in the city of Philadelphia so they don't go to other places, that we move this country and this region on the right track?
My name is Michael Manning. I go by Mike. My current title is CEO and owner of Care Partners Plus. It's a communication and data company that focuses predominantly on healthcare improvement. In the military, I entered the military as a private in 1972, and when I was honorably discharged, I was a captain in Special Forces, and that was in 1989. Upon being discharged from the military, I went into healthcare. I started out as an administrator in Pittsburgh, in a depressed community where the hospital was struggling for survival. And that was very attractive to me. It was very similar to being in Special Forces, where you really get involved with people that need the United States presence through military advisors to help them survive, basically. I was very fortunate because of my military background. I was promoted very quickly. So within 3 years of having left the military, entering the hospital administration world, I became a hospital CEO. XML was introduced by Microsoft in 2003, which enabled entities to talk between one another, which is what is the impetus of our business. Our business specializes in allowing patients and providers to talk confidentially, where they're able to share information that is very difficult to obtain. And in 2006, when I registered this company, I also registered the ideas with the U.S. Patent Office. And eventually we were awarded 5 patents. We are the ones who pioneered what they call patient engagement. And patient engagement is really a phrase that is related to enabling you and me and other patients to be able to communicate privately with our healthcare provider, and the information be cycled in a loop that goes to your pharmacy and goes to any of the healthcare entities that you might be involved with, accessing your healthcare from. Doesn't sound novel today, but in 2006, no one was doing this. So in 2012, maybe a year earlier, I met David O., who is a remarkable individual. And he was the type of person that I respected. I didn't get to know him as a politician. I got to know him as a former Special Forces officer. Although he was not SF qualified, he was in Special Forces. And Special Forces soldiers and officers have a certain code. And that code is developed while you're going through training. And you don't make it through training, which is the most rigorous, equal to SEALs training or any other military unit at that capacity. It's very challenging, very difficult, really requires a lot of character and other attributes. I got to know him and we became friends. And he was interested in our technology, and he came out to our office and asked for us to demonstrate things for him. And he saw it and wanted to help veterans benefit from it. So he introduced me to a couple of different veteran causes, which really were causes that there wasn't a solution for. And the causes was that veterans' problems, needs, were falling through the cracks. And so there was a lot of desperation and frustration, and it really evolved into the suicide problem that we all know about, 20 suicides a day. And so Councilman O invited me to give public testimony along with some other professionals because he knew that we had a solution. And what he was trying to do was to help make the VA aware of the solution. And so beginning in 2013, his introduction to the VA started me on my own cause or campaign to help get this technology into veterans' hands. Because what it did was it recorded their problems and it documented their problems. A big issue that is the impetus for suicide is frustration and anxiety, and that frustration and anxiety occurs when people don't get what they have earned. And that's what was happening to veterans. And that is what our technology, the Veteran Interactive Management System, does. The most important service that it provides is to ensure that the individual who has earned something or has or should have access to something, when I say something, it's healthcare, actually gets it when they need it in real time and has it addressed the way that it should be. So within our system are all these different algorithms that understand what you as an individual either have earned through your entitlement to any number of services or what you're paying for through your insurance company. So our artificial intelligence knows that when you express the condition or service that you need, our system interprets that, ties it together with a structured protocol, and is able to go to, right? So it's identifying or detecting a individual's needs that you might not ordinarily understand until someone has an adverse event or commits suicide. I am totally supportive of David O. Again, David O. as an individual, before he got involved with my company, I evaluated who he was as a person. And I marveled when I learned that he was in politics. It's not something I usually am attracted to. He is a individual who works every day. I mean, he is not doing anything unproductive. Every time I've called his office or have showed up independently, he was working, and that always impressed me. And he was working on grassroots issues, nothing pie in the sky, nothing to feather his own bed. He is someone who works for people. He comes from blue-collar, grassroots people, but he's a very intelligent, articulate individual, well-educated, and understands how to connect with people. He really cares. He's got a lot of family service in his background, and he has a lot of values. He's a Christian, and he's someone who believes in a higher authority, which is something that I respect. And he does things, he's very creative, right? So he doesn't say no, he says yes, and he figures out how to help and how to get something done. He doesn't pick the things that are easy. He takes on whatever the challenge is for whatever project he's trying to support. So my relationship with him is my only involvement in politics is through David O. But what he's done is, again, he motivated me to get involved with veterans. I would have never done it even though I was a veteran without him. And it's been a very difficult road because I have to interact with a lot of bureaucracy, which for me, non-political bureaucracy is difficult. And so he's always been the ear I've talked to. He's always offered to help in any opportunity to get this idea out. The idea is it's more than an idea. He helped me get involved with the VA. I worked at the VA for 3 years. I took my company in. We, pro bono, invested about $1.5 million of our capital into proving this system that I described that you asked me about, VIMS. And we proved it all the way up to the secretary level. And while Secretary Shulkin was the head of the Secretary of the VA, David made sure I was able to interact with him. You know that the president signed an executive order just recently. The things that are in that executive order, we do. But David O. is my go-to person, and he has done a fantastic job in his current position. He's involved with every single opportunity that's presented to him from different associations. So veterans usually form into VFW or different veteran organizations, and what they need is advocacy or association, so that when they have a problem, they have someone to go to. That's David O. David O. answers every veteran's request, and what he does is he personally gets involved with who they are, what they need, despite whether they're honorably discharged or not. For a veteran, that's probably the most important thing. They know that they have someone who will listen to them, not pay lip service to them, but will actually get involved, take the time that's required. And David's done that for so many people. I don't want to name any names, and it would take me a while. But he gets involved with the most challenging problems and is uninhibited when it comes to speaking truth to power in order to help explain veterans. I do know one case that is probably important to mention, where there was a Special Forces non-commissioned officer, several combat tours to Iraq and Afghanistan, who was going to get discharged because he intervened with one of the Afghan leaders and their corruption and scandalous behavior with some of the village people that was morally questionable. And when this person was basically being railroaded out of the military, Dave stepped in, found out the truth, got the truth elevated to the Department of Defense Secretary, and got this individual's discharge overturned. And that story is known throughout Special Forces.
My name is Michael Papier, and currently I'm medically retired from the Army. I was enlisted for about 10 years, and then I went to OCS, got commissioned, and I think about the time I got back from IOBC, the Infantry Officer Basic Course, is when I met David. And I was impressed because right away I got the feeling, one, he's a smart, articulate individual, and I got the feeling, sometimes you meet somebody, you just get the feeling that they're good folks. There's a good energy about them. Then I got to know him more and talk to him more, and I felt his personal integrity, his personal morals and ethics were very much in line with mine, and I felt he was honest and straightforward. That doesn't mean that sometimes we didn't misunderstand, but if you gave him a moment, he would clarify any questions that you had, and it always made sense. It was like half the time it was, I missed something in what he said, or I misinterpreted, and so he was always very patient, and that's the thing that always impressed me. It was like, no matter what stuff came down the pike, it was like, no matter how the military can have a lot of minutia, okay? There can be a lot of minutia in the military, and it didn't faze him, not one bit. And I really admired that, because some people get, red in the face, the blood pressure goes up, they get pissed off, and he was never like that. Really easygoing, very, very easy to talk to, empathetic. He would try to understand whatever perspective or point of view that you gave him, no matter if it was from left field or whatever, and he would try, and he would even go as far to re-articulate the conversation to make sure he understood what you were saying, and then when he understood what you were saying, then he would tell you, more or less what he thought was pro or con about it. But knowing him and knowing his motivations, his drive, his intellect, I don't think he'd have a problem with any part of the command. And because he also listens. So if somebody has a good idea, it's better than his, he doesn't care. It's sort of the mentality of, if somebody else has a better idea, I don't care who gets credit for it, as long as we get the job done and it's the best way we can do it. Same kind of respect category as I do people like General Blum, that's who it was, I was talking about, and like my father and my grandfather. I trust them It's not something every veteran will say about another person. You know, when they really trust them.
Okay.
You know, it used to be the question was, would you share a foxhole with him? And with Dave, yeah. I might have to put a little extra planking under his feet because he's not the tallest guy in the world, but I love him. He's great. He's always treated me with respect, with dignity. He's never, ever talked down about me or bad about me. I've never heard of him speaking bad about anybody. He always tries to speak the truth. And integrity is big, big with me. That means a lot. And he's a tough individual. He looks sometimes like an easygoing pushover because he can be so nice. But that's part of his personality. But I think he's got a line he just will not cross, and I respect that a lot. That means a lot to me.
My name is Nicholas Panarello. I served in the Army during the height of the Vietnam War. I graduated college in 1967. 3 days later, I was in the Army. I had enlisted to go to Infantry Officers Candidate School, which was at Fort Benning, Georgia. Became a second lieutenant. Was volunteered for Special Forces training. And as a preliminary to that, I went to airborne school and then went to Special Forces, became what's called a Green Beret, and I served consecutive overseas tours in the Panama Canal Zone with what was then the 8th Special Forces Group, and then Vietnam with the 5th Special Forces Group. All together, I served from 1967 through 1992. The balance of that time was generally in the National Guard. I was in the Massachusetts National Guard, Pennsylvania National Guard, Maryland Guard, and the Mississippi Guard. When I first went in, we never called ourselves Green Berets. The beret was something that you wore. Special Forces is different, and that is we pride ourselves on being the quiet professionals. I met David. We were adversaries. He had just started practicing law. He was working in the district attorney's office of the city of Philadelphia. I recruited him. I was the XO, the executive officer of the company. One of my responsibilities was I managed the program that dealt with getting people ready who we had recruited, who were then going to go on to Special Forces training. There's a difference, and this is where some of the confusion comes in. In the active duty, you don't recruit your members. What happens is the Army trains people who volunteer, right? And they go through the course, and then they get assigned to active duty Special Forces groups. That's not how it works in the reserve component. In the reserve component, people elect to join, and what happens is there is always a shortage of Special Forces, Green Berets, and there was in the 80s when there was a much larger force. But what we had to do then was we recruited people, we essentially trained them up, then sent them on to Special Forces training, and then if they successfully completed the program, they came back and were part of the unit. But each reserve component Special Forces company had a program where we trained people in order to go away to school. Okay, and then that's the particular unit that initially David was assigned to and that I supervised. So David had all of the qualifications to become a Green Beret. our unit was activated for the Gulf War. At the time, now remember, he's not Special Forces qualified at that point. He was in the process of preparing to go through what was called a Special Forces Assessment course. In the 80s, your duty uniform for him was that he wore a beret with a flash. You wouldn't necessarily have seen that in an active duty unit because the people who were assigned to the unit were qualified because you couldn't get to that unit until you finished the course. Because we were training our own people to go to the course, his uniform was that he wore the same uniform we did. He had the same beret on with the same flash, but his shoulder did not have that tab saying he was Special Forces. Part of the problem that I think David experienced is there are very few people, A, who understand the nuances of what the military is, who then understand what Special Forces is, and then understand the various pathways to how one would become a Special Forces qualified. There was part of the controversy that David went through was that there was somebody who said, or I got a call from a reporter, and he said, "What's wrong with a photograph of David in his duty uniform wearing a green beret with a flash? That's that would symbolize the particular group that he was in." And I said, absolutely nothing. The unit was activated. The unit was a Special Forces company, okay? He was a member of that company. He was activated. The unit, had it deployed in combat, would have performed roles consistent with what a Special Forces company did. Could have been strategic reconnaissance, direct action, training other people. And they had an obligation to produce a certain number of A-teams that I previously alluded to. A unit has the ability to qualify a person before they've necessarily gone through the course. In order to man and to produce the number of units that they were required, what they did is they gave David an MOS that was consistent with being a qualified Special Forces officer. But it was done at a time of a national emergency, and indeed, you would argue, a time of war. Okay? So somebody decided that he was qualified on an emergency basis in order to perform those roles. In peacetime, that would not have occurred. If you and I have served together, if we've sweat together, if I've shared my blood with you in order to hollow the sacrifices that we make together, well, we're brothers. It's a very strong bond. You know, Caviani spent almost a year battling an exotic form of, I think, Agent Orange related cancer. And that was covered, but, you know, his family, there was family support involved, and David was very, very, he took on that cause, okay? And, well, Caviani was a big guy. I mean, he, in Special Forces, he was very heroic in defending his unit, but more importantly, he was captured. And then, actually, I think part of his Medal of Honor citation deals with the stoic nature and the resistance and the inspiration he was while he was in captivity. So Caviani was like a big guy, and very well respected. And David raised money for Caviani, but a lot of people would say, well, wait a minute, wasn't the VA or somebody paying for that? Yeah, but those benefits only go so far, and there were incidentals associated with it, and David raised money for that. David doesn't do anything half-ass, okay? I don't think that there is a single member of Philadelphia government, let alone city council, who is more involved in efforts that deal with the quality of care and life issues of veterans than David. I mean, there are some things he did that, remember, I live in Florida. I'm not here on a day-to-day basis. but virtually any issue that promotes veterans' rights and benefits or deals with a cause, David is a point person for in Philadelphia. A lot of people are afraid of the system. A lot of people are afraid of an initial rejection. A lot of people would not be aware of what benefits may or may not exist, okay? And anything is a process. David is unique, certainly in city council, in that he knows he is a veteran, and he's an attorney, right? And therefore he knows how to navigate issues both as a veteran and as an attorney. So I know it's like everything he would do is pro bono, right? So I think that he's a tremendous asset to council in general, because there's a certain sensitivity that he would bring to these issues that council endorses. Like, for example, the issue that dealt with the rules of engagement. We brought that forward to city council. But if you're a veteran and you're in need, I don't think would be a more understanding voice than his.
My name is Debbie Rafferty. The foundation is the Wild Bill Garnier Memorial Fund, and it was started after the Kimmel Center. We had a funeral memorial for him after his funeral. It was about a month after he passed. We raised money in order to have the memorial, and we had leftover money. And since my grandfather his whole life donated to veterans causes, I figured what better way to keep his name alive than to continue that. And we raise money every year to give to other veterans causes. David O contacted me, I guess at the very beginning, that he heard that we wanted to raise a statue, and he offered to help us. The paratroopers have, that little bond, and I think he went way above to help us raise money for this statue. And he was, friends with my grandfather. Prior, he had helped him in his house with, there was a parking pole they were trying to take out, and they contacted David O, so he helped with that. He also knew Babe Heffron, my grandfather's friend from Philly. So David O was a big part in raising money for the statue, and also helping us with the Kimmel Center. He actually had his own benefit at Constadter's in the Northeast, and he raised somewhere around $15,000 for our cause. And it was, I think, our second fundraiser. So he was a big help for us. David still pitches in. He comes to our golf outing we have every year. He would come speak. He'll do whatever we ask him to do, but he definitely shows up. He's definitely one of our biggest supporters. And if I need any connection in Philadelphia, I will email David O and he'll help me. David O helps out with all veterans. I guess his passion is paratroopers, because that's what he was, but he helps all veterans. David O has always been a strong advocate for veterans. He helps with multiple organizations that help veterans. He's always fighting for veterans' rights. If anybody has a problem, they can contact David O and he would help them. I think David O is down to earth. He's one of us. I follow him on Twitter, on Facebook. He's always doing something for someone, especially in Philadelphia. I think he is constantly telling everyone that the veterans are important, that we need to take care of our veterans. We need to make sure there's no homeless vets. If they need medical, get medical before there's any tragedies with the VA hospitals. I think the VA hospital is doing a much better job than it did before. I think it's because of people like David O, who keep telling us that we have to take care of our veterans.